is to know. Shemot, Exodus, and state violence. So we're in the book of Shemot, the book of Exodus, but the Parashat is named Shemot. And so the text begins with a new king arose who did not know Joseph. And this week we read Shemot, and Shemot means names. The portion opens with careful accounting. It says, these are the names of the Israelites who came to Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim means Egypt. It also means the narrow place, means the place that caused us pain. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, that's all in Exodus 1, verses 1 through 4. These are individual human names with specific identities, specific histories, and their names. The Torah teaches us when power tries to turn people into categories, memory becomes resistance. And then abruptly the text shifts. A new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. Pharaoh chose ignorance. He chose to forget that Joseph saved Egypt from famine. He chose to see the Israelites as threats instead of their neighbors, as problems instead of people. Once Pharaoh made that choice, everything else followed. Forced labor, surveillance, population control, and eventually the killing of children. This is how state violence begins, with deliberate refusal to know. And when power decides it doesn't need you to know, when power decides it doesn't need to know you, it can do anything to you. It's kind of like the architecture of not knowing. Building a system where people can kill with impunity requires more than cruelty or bad actors. It requires institutional permission to not know. Protocols that allow agents to treat human beings as categories, training that centers on threat assessment over human recognition, and language that turns people into targets, subjects, non-compliant individuals. A culture where I fear for my life becomes a magic phrase that justifies any level of violence, even when the evidence shows otherwise. And cruelty, and crucially, it requires the rest of us to accept these justifications often enough that the system can keep running. This is what Pharaoh built in Mitzrayim, in Egypt. Before the taskmasters, before the bricks and mortar came the ideological work. Pharaoh had to convince Egypt that the Israelites were dangerous, that they were multiplying too quickly, that they might side with Egypt's enemies, and that harsh measures were necessary for national security. The text says, look, the Israelite people are much too numerous for us. Let us deal shrewdly with them so that they may not increase. Deal shrewdly. The Hebrew word is nithachma. Nithachma. Let us be cunning. Let us be strategic. This is the language of policy, of calculated oppression, of systems designed to do harm while maintaining plausibility and deniability. Pharaoh didn't need every citizen of Mitzrayim to personally hate the Israelites. He just needed them to accept the logic of the system. Now, the midwives refused. But here's what's remarkable about Shemot. The system fails. Pharaoh orders the midwife, Shifra and Pua, to kill every Hebrew boy at birth. The text says, when you deliver the Hebrew women, he's telling Shifra and Pua, when you deliver, look at the birth stool. If it's a boy, kill it, kill him. If it's a girl, let it live. This is the ultimate expression of Pharaoh's logic. Kill the threat before it can grow. But the midwives refuse. The midwives, fearing God, did not do as the king of Mitzrayim had told them. They let the boys live. They refused to accept the categories. They refused to see Hebrew babies as a threat, and they refused not to know. And when Pharaoh demands an explanation, they lie to protect the people they serve. The text tells us, and God dealt well with the midwives. This is the first act of resistance in the book of Exodus. It's not Moses, and it's not a dramatic confrontation. Two women choosing to know the people the system told them to kill. Two women refusing to let policy override their humanity, and two women organizing their disobedience and protecting each other in the process. This is what resistance looks like, my friends, at the ground level. We are living in a moment when thousands of armed federal agents are being deployed into communities across the country, when ICE is conducting operations in churches, outside schools, at traffic stops, when the official language is all about public safety and national security and removing criminal aliens, when the system is depending on most people to accept categories, to believe the justification to look away. We are being asked to we're being asked to be Pharaoh's Egypt. We're being asked to accept that some people we're being asked to accept that some people's fear justifies other people's death. We're being asked to believe that the state's version of events is more reliable than our own eyes. We're being asked to keep quiet, to stay safe, to let the system do its work. But the Torah is asking us to be Shifra and Bua. The Torah is asking us to be Shifra and Tua. The Torah is asking us to refuse these categories, to choose to know, to organize our disobedience, and to protect each other. In Shemot, Exodus, in Shemot, God hears the cry of the oppressed. God says, I have marked well the plight of my people. I have heeded their outcry. Yes, I am mindful of their suffering. God knows intimately, specifically by name. And because God knows, God acts. God doesn't ask Pharaoh nicely, but God sends Moses to confront Pharaoh with demand. That demand is, let my people go. Liberation requires confrontation of power. It requires naming the violence. It requires organizing pressure and refusal. It requires us to tell the truth, even when and especially when the truth burns. The truth is, we can choose to know or we can choose to look away. But we cannot do both. When power tries to turn people into categories, memory becomes resistance. Zichrono livracha, zichrono, no, zichrono livracha, may memory be a revolution. Shabbat Shalom, Happy New Year, and may this Shabbat bring the rest and renewal that you need. Remember, joy, have fun. Y'all have a great evening. Bye.